The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. Also present is Steve Rice from Fall River Community Media, who is operating the camera, and Denny Cosmo, Director of Joseph A. Marshall Veterans Center at Bristol Community College. I am interviewing Robert Uphold on Friday, May 9th, 2025 at the Fall River Media Center at Bristol Community College in Fall River, Massachusetts. I am Michael Stender, representing the Student Veterans of America chapter at Bristol Community College and the Joseph A. Marshall Veterans Center. Robert, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
All right. Ready to rock and roll with this?
Oh, definitely.
Perfect. So we're going to start from the beginning.
All right.
Where are you from? Where were you born?
So I was born in Long Island, in East Meadowbrook, Long Island, New York, and I lived there till I was 9 in a place called North Babylon.
Okay.
Then we moved out to the Midwest, where my father was from, into a little town called Pittsfield, Illinois. And that's where I grew up till I went into the service.
Nice. Was that part of Illinois very patriotic?
It was extremely patriotic. It was a lot of World War II. We did have at least, I think we have one World War I vet, a lot of Korean vets, a lot of Vietnam vets. And they were very, very patriotic.
Nice. What made you want to go in?
So around 1997, I started looking into going to college. And I was being scouted out to play football for a few of the local town colleges. And I looked at them and said, hey, you know what? You guys got till this date, December 13th, to freaking send me a letter or let me know you're interested. That day came. And I looked at my parents and I was like, look, I've been asking around to the family. My grandparents, both my grandfathers were in World War II. One was in the Army, one was in the Navy. My uncle, my mother's uncle, was Navy. Her cousin was Air Force. My father and his uncle were Marines. So I started asking them, what do you think about the service? Tell me about your time in the service. Every single one of them, except for my father and my uncle, complained. They told me the negative stuff. All right. My dad's uncle, my great uncle Ralph, he was in during Korea, Vietnam, and into the Beirut time frame. And he looked at me, and this man's like 6'6". He goes, you know what? I'll tell you this much, Rob. Corps screwed up, but what branch of service isn't? And I'd gladly go back and do it again. So my dad came in off the road from where he was working, and I asked him the same question. He almost gave me the same verbatim answer. At that point, I was like, you know what? I'm going to choose to go into the Marine Corps since college isn't working out. Didn't look like it's going to work out. I went in on December 14th to the MEP Center from the Marine Corps recruiters out of Quincy, signed the delayed entry program, and then almost a year later, I was standing on the yellow footprints.
Wow. So this was around 1997, correct?
97, 98.
98. So this was pre-9/11.
Yes.
Was the time to enlist still pretty patriotic then, or was it kind of at a standstill?
A lot of people weren't really enlisting. The biggest thing we had going on was Kosovo. It's really those that were truly dedicated to protecting their country or wanting to prove that they're with their families, family tradition to go in. So that's what was going on during that time frame. We really didn't have any big wars. I mean, we had Desert Storm, Desert Shield in 93, but we're talking almost late 90s. There's really nothing going on besides dealing with some Kosovoan refugees. We had a bad problem with the political climate because at that time President Clinton was in and he was shutting down bases. So if you went in because you're either extremely patriotic, you felt a sense of duty and a sense of honor, and that's it.
So you made it to Marine Corps boot camp, and we've all
Yes.
heard stories that's the toughest one. What was it like for you?
So, because my great uncle and my father were both Marines, I would talk to them about boot camp. So we're talking 50s and then late 60s, early 70s. You know, the days when they had the big issue with the creek drowning down in Paris Island with the drill instructor that marched his platoon to their death. They were still getting hit. Vietnam was going on, so they were kind of rushing them through, and a lot of people were, you know, being told you either went to the service or you went to jail, and they were getting put in. So they would tell me horror stories about it, and I'm sitting there going, okay, this is what I got to prepare myself for. This is what I got to prepare myself for. I get there, and mind you, now we're at 13 weeks, and it's like a breeze for me because I had already lived a structured life, and I expected the worst. You know, I hoped for the best, but expected the worst when I was going through. And I think the hardest part about doing the boot camp for me, honestly, was that final effects hike where we're climbing up the Reaper, and we're right at the end of it, and that's when it started getting hard for me because we're hearing the song "Proud to be an American." At that point, we knew we had made it. We were going to be Marines, and it was hard not to cry when we're standing up there having our drill instructors hand us our Eagle, Globe, and Anchors in hand, and no longer calling us, you know, recruit, moron, a few of the other nice names, and saying, "Congratulations, Marine."
That's huge. If there's one thing about any boot camp experiences, everybody remembers their instructors.
Yes.
All of them. Did any of them make a huge impression on you going into like the Corps at that point?
There was two when I was in recruit training. Was drill instructor Sergeant Barra. This guy was literally like 5'5", 5'6", little skinny, Mexican, and constantly a ball fire. And he had his very distinctive drill instructor voice. He'd always challenge me to do things. And the other one was Gunnery Sergeant Timmons. We got him halfway through, and he felt like he had to be the heavy hat because they've got three different hats there. They've got the senior, the heavy, and then the green belt. The green belt's usually the youngest one. And the heavy's the guy that takes you out to the pits and PTs you. Well, he felt like he had to be the heavy hat on steroids, and yeah.
Oh man, so they all made an impression, and then taking what you learned from them, going into your next school or training.
After I graduated from them, we went home for our typical 10 days. I go back to Camp Pendleton because I went to the West Coast. All right. I enlisted out of St. Louis, so everything I did was West Coast. All right. And I go into ITB, and I'm kind of in a culture shock. I'm expecting professional instructors. What I honestly felt is the instructor I had was not an instructor. We literally taught ourselves by reading the 6-5, which is commonly referred to as the Marine Corps Bible, because he would literally be like, "Okay, who's got Skittles?" Throw them out on the ground. He'd grab them and leave, and that put an impact on me going later on in life to saying, if I ever decide to stay in, I'm going to come back here and I'll make sure people actually know what they're doing. And believe it or not, it's actually what I did when I re-enlisted after I got done with my first 4 years. Mind you, 9/11 hits. I'm being promoted to corporal. 11 days later, we have the terrorist attack. And we're watching that on TV out in 29 Palms where I was stationed. I'm yelling at my, staff sergeant to come over and see what's going on. All of a sudden, we all realize it's not fake. And our staff NCOs run to the office. We get down on the ground over by the parade deck, and our battalion commander comes out. after the final tower fell, and literally looks at us, goes, "Gentlemen, this is our day of infamy. This is the day that we failed our country." We all were so mad, so angry, and some of us were extremely worried because we still couldn't get a hold of our family members. Like, I have family still in New York that were there. One of my Marines, because I was his team leader, freaking was losing his mind because his mother lived like about 10 blocks from the World Trade Center, and he couldn't get a hold of her. So after we got done talked about by our battalion commander, and we all felt that anger and sorrow, we all freaking went upstairs, started packing our stuff to have TMO come in and move it, because we were getting ready to go somewhere. We were literally going, screw this, we're prepping. We don't know where we're going, what we're doing yet, but we're getting all of our stuff together. We're doing junk on the bunks, packing everything up, going down to getting our weapons out of the armory and going down back to the parade deck to sit on the tarmac. And my Lance Corporal, his name was Remesis Balbuena. Balbuena comes into my room, and he looks at me, he breaks down. And it's probably the one time that I turn around and say, I don't care about the ranks. He just goes, "Uphold, I'm scared. And I'm like, "Balbuena, is your phone working?" He goes, "No." So go ahead and use mine. Gave him my phone code, because we were living in barracks. We had to have codes to actually call out on our own phones. He finally got through to his mom. Now, mind you, we're in California. It's around 2:30 in the afternoon. So in New York, it's like almost 5 o'clock at night. And that was probably the happiest I'd seen him in a long time. And that made him really respect me, because I didn't care about the fact that he didn't call me corporal. I was more worried about his mental health, about going over.
Yeah.
And then we sit down on the tarmac for the next day and a half.
Wow. During that time, especially around 9/11, there was a big surge in people going in and enlisting right off the bat just because of that event.
Yeah.
How did that affect you guys at all? Like, because a lot of people were going into the Corps, they wanted to go fight, they were ready, or they thought they were.
It was affecting us when they finally come to us. They're sitting there going, "When are we going to go fight? When are we going to go fight?" And we look at them. We were a premier combat unit for desert fighting. All right? I was with 1st Battalion, 7th Marines at the time. All we did is train for combat. And we literally look at them and go, "Slow your roll." I can't really say what it said, because I don't want to be disgusting. But slow your roll, calm down. It will happen when it happens. Don't worry about it. We got to just make sure we're doing the right thing. We got to make sure we're training, because we don't want any of us hurt. And around that time, it was around 2002, it was when I was up for re-enlistment, and I decided, okay, we haven't gone nowhere yet. We haven't invaded anything yet. I'll go ahead and go to SOI. And I wanted to go to the East Coast because my family's on the East Coast. So I get out to SOI. And the day that I land in SOI, it's like 11:30 at night. I check in with my orders, and I decide, I'm going to go out to the bar. Not even 20 minutes later, I'm sitting there, I'm watching President Bush Jr. on the news saying, "We're invading Iraq." Paid my tab, got a cab, went back to base and said, "Have they instituted stop loss, stop move?" And they go, "Yep." I was like, "Okay, so I'm checking out, right?" And they go, "No, you checked in before." I mean, you're kidding me, right? "No, you checked in before." I literally had checked in 25 minutes before stop loss, stop move went into effect. So I had to stay at SOI and be an instructor.
Wow.
I was not happy about that, because I felt it was my duty to go over and fight with my men. But that made me realize, when I was told that, no, I'm not leaving, that I got to make sure that these guys, wherever I go, because I didn't know what battalion I was going to go to yet, because that was next morning. I got to make sure wherever these guys go, wherever I have, whether it's infantry or the non-infantry guys, I got to make sure they're ready.
So your mindset had to change for that.
Yes.
Completely, because you weren't about to go overseas and fight, but you were going to train the guys who have a better chance of going over to seas and fight and get them into that mentality.
Yes.
And these were all new people, right?
Some of them right out of recruit training, because I ended up going to the non-infantry side, and some of the guys and girls we would get were right out of infantry. Were right out of recruit training because their reserve units said that they had to go straight to that because they were getting mobilized and they needed them right away. Others would take their 10 days leave. Most of them were just literally graduated from recruit training. Right around, I want to say, the beginning of '04, we started getting in a lot of reservists, and a lot of them had been out for years. And they're all mad because they got recalled. We're trying to train them, and I'm looking at a guy that's, equivalent of a staff sergeant when he got out, got the same staff sergeant rank, looking at me going, I don't care what you want to do, Corporal, I'm not doing it. Finally had to get our company commander and everybody involved into that stuff and saying, no, you have to. One of the funniest things that my friends at the SOI, my fellow coworkers, I should say, would say to me was, I actually had a sergeant, a female sergeant who was around 33. I was 23, just turning 23 at the time, and I was a corporal. Right in my critique that it felt extremely weird taking orders from somebody so junior and so young that I didn't really respect them until I started realizing how hard they were training us. And I would get busted about that all for like the next year and a half that I was there on the guys that knew about it, because it was kind of funny because I'm literally looking at her going, Sergeant, I'm giving you respect, but you need to do what I'm telling you. Some of the fun times from there.
Did you attend any schools and training while you were in?
So when I was first in as a young PFC Lance Corporal, I got a chance to go to machine gunners course. And then when I became corporal, I went to squad leaders course for the infantry, and to get the B billet, because they had just changed SOI over to a B billet, I had to go through MCTIC. Those were the courses that I went through.
And did you enjoy those courses? Because you mentioned you were recommended to go to all of them.
I loved all of them. I loved learning from, because the squad leaders course got me to thinking more about using combined arms and moving my men properly. The machine gunners course gave me a chance to learn armor ID and how difficult those machine gunners actually have it. The MCTIC portion was required because it was made a B billet, and it was teaching us to be formal instructors. And learning some of the things from there is stuff that you kind of forget as you're going through your time, facing movements, different calls for cadence, because infantry, it's left face, forward march, stop, right face, that's about it what we did, because most of our time was we're moving in pincer maneuvers, or pinwheeling around, setting up attacks and doing live fire training. Doing the actual marching movements really wasn't something that we were worried about, because we were more worried about training for combat and making sure that we're all alive.
Of course. When did you actually able to get overseas?
So I left SOI in 2005, 2006, around the December of that time frame, and I got sent to out to Pendleton with my wife. I had orders to go directly to 1-1, and what ended up happening is my qualifications were high enough that when I showed up to division at Margaritaville in Camp Pendleton, they changed my orders and put me with 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance. So I trained with them for a while, and we went over, and my first tour duty started in March of 2007 over in Iraq.
Did that have like a special meaning for you, because you've been wanting to do that for so long, and you finally get there? And what's it like?
Finally felt like I'm doing my job. I knew I was doing my job as an instructor, but my job in the Marine Corps was infantry. I was to be that war fighter. I'm finally over there to do what I got to do protect the United States. Maybe find some bad guys and stop some bad people from doing harm to the Iraqi people that we were working with.
What was your first impression when you got overseas?
Honestly, my first impression was, wow, it's beautiful. We Get to Kuwait, then we go to Al Asad, and we move out to Kaprawa in the Al-Anbar province of Iraq. And of course, we get there at night. Next morning, I wake up hearing the call to prayer, and I'm like, okay, everybody's starting to come in because we went an advance party. And I look and I see something that a lot of people were actually jealous of me. I get a chance to see the Euphrates River. First thought was, man, it smells, because we were smelling the thing. But secondly, I'm going, this is a beautiful area. Those mosques, the architecture was awesome. And then, of course, we do our patrol out, and I'm still doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm still going, my God, it's so beautiful out here. Then we get to our forward operating base, our FOB over at Husayba. And I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna suck. Because it was just straight up desert, maybe some couple hills and everything. And I'm sitting there going, I gotta remember all my desert training that I did back when I was a Lance Corporal. Now I'm a sergeant, I'm 25, 26. And the only desert training we really did for us was we went to the Combined Ardent exercises in 29 Palms for the unit. And I'm going, man, there's a lot more I got to remember. So, and that's what I thought of the place. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was great. And I was actually happy to be over there.
Mm. How long did it take for you to be in a combat position while you were overseas?
It was like the third day my entire unit was out. Got into a hairy situation with an IED. We thankfully didn't set it off, but it had been set off, and we're patrolling around looking for everybody, and we're learning how to use these gun residue kits that can detect explosives on people's bodies. And we were out. We had actually been out 24 hours at the same spot, setting up a vehicle checkpoint, which was a big no-no, but we really didn't have anywhere else to go at that time. And we had told our following platoon that was leaving when we were coming in, don't go over here because we've been there for 24 hours. Skirt around this area. I guess they didn't listen to us, and they hit some IEDs. Thankfully, none of my friends in the platoon were hurt. I think one of them, Nesser, freaking had his eyebrows burnt off. But we ended up going back out there to provide security and found out, one, they hit the intrusionary device, which is the fireball device. It goes off after the primary. And how we found that out was when EOD came in, freaking they hit the primary and knocked the artillery rounds up out of the dirt.
Wow.
So yeah, we were all kind of freaking out because they had 3 daisy chains. I want to say they were 120 millimeter mortars or something like that. They're big. They're about, I would say, close to like our 105 howitzers and their equivalent, the Russian equivalent of them. Once we blew them, we continued on the mission for the platoon that had got their vehicle destroyed, and their people had gotten their gear and some little body hair loss. And we come upon these 2 guys over this little ville, and we start testing everybody except for the females, because we didn't have a female with us. And the 2 military age males, the father and the son, I remember both testing positive on my kits. That was probably the scariest, the second scariest time that I was out there. The first scariest one that I had, because once we put zip ties on them, everything went to hell. It's the only way I could say that. All the other military age males that were there were sitting there racing their shirt up, trying to tell us to stop, let them go. And communication was an issue because freaking our radios weren't really fully in sync, so we're constantly screaming at each other. I remember turning the corner with one of the POW or prisoners that I had taken to take them back to Kaprawa, and bringing my weapon up immediately, because as soon as I turn the corner, all I see is a barrel, and I've got my finger ready to go onto the trigger, and and ready to take it off safe, and I realize it's my lance corporal. But he's doing the same thing that I'm doing. We're pointing our weapons at each other. I'm like, Jesus, Malin. He turned around, he goes, I know, Sergeant, this is crazy. So we get this guy in, we get the first military ma'am into the back of our LAV, and we separate the other guy in a different LAV, and then we take off, and everybody's still screaming. And our staff sergeant lieutenant freaking go over the radio and turn around and say, hey, let your guys know. Great job, because I swore I thought somebody was going to get shot today. And we all thought the same thing, because when we debriefed about it later, we're like, how the hell did we not do a blow on blow? Worse than they're going. We really, I'm thanking all of my guys that were on the ground, because I'm like, you guys really paid attention, because I tell you, there's a couple times I thought I was going to shoot him, just turning the corner out of nowhere. And with the problems we were having with our radio, with our PIRs, which was our personal radios, that's what we were having problems with. And we're like, great job, guys. Now let's go finish the rest of the day.
So it kind of shows, like, even in the face of danger with the military, there's always that camaraderie with, like, your squad mates or your guys.
Oh, yeah.
Can you give me more examples of, like, that camaraderie that took place throughout your time overseas?
So we would get back, and we all believed that no matter what, didn't care who you were, you pitched in. Some units you would see the NCOs and the senior NCOs and staff NCOs not do anything. My belief to my men was if they're doing it, I'm doing it. And it really worked out as far as camaraderie wise, because other NCOs be sitting in the hooches, sucking in the AC, while I'm out there with the men helping clean the vehicle out, restock it. We're constantly doing weapons maintenance, going over different tactics and things we want to try, things we want to see. My lance corporals were doing their PPE checks when we were getting ready to go on everybody else, and then my corporals would do it on them, and I'd walk up to my corporals and they'd be like, we're all good. I'm like, okay, and I'd do my PPE check. That's the camaraderie that we built up there, because we still stay in touch with the ones that are still around. We still keep in touch. We talk all the time on Facebook or online via emails. And just some of the things that we would do together, like me and Willenberg, my corporal, when we got to one of our last bases that we were at, we got ticked off because there was no flagpole there, and we built one right over our hooch to say, you know what, there's going to be an American flag on here. We don't care who we're pissing off, because this is an American base.
Mm. Did you guys have any like fun like rituals or things to get yourself like set up for like the day, or because
so every time we got a mission to go out, Malin would break out the speakers and pop in drowning pools, let the bodies hit the floor. Staff Sergeant, now Master Guns, Skinner, but at the time was Staff Sergeant. He had this little doll that he had from his daughter that she gave to him on his first deployment during the invasion. Mm. So he would, of course, kiss it and put it right in the turret next to him. I had a little doll that was given to me by one of my wife's family members, and I would look at it, set it up there on my by my radio rack, and I had a picture from that my wife had drawn for me, and I would literally give it a kiss, fold it up, put it behind our ammo can, and say, I'm coming home.
Nice. When did you finally get to go home?
We finally left Iraq for the first deployment on October 7th of 2007. We flew out that day back to the United States.
Nice.
I had the unfortunate task of bringing back what was left of our battalion, because we all couldn't fit on one flight. So I had a whole, about a company's worth, about 30 people worth, that I had to be in charge of and get them back to the States. Mm.
And on coming back, did you have like a different billet at that point, or did you?
I was still the same billet as section chief for that specific deployment. I was also made a stick leader for our guys. So I had to make sure everything was responsible. And one of the screwed up things that had happened was one of my guys got a tooth knocked out playing basketball 3 hours before we're supposed to fly. So I'm running him over to the dental over there, and they turn around and go, well, when's he going back to the States? And I was like, we're leaving in like 2.5 hours, Doc. And he goes, all I can tell you is either he stays here and we cap it. I was like, no, that ain't gonna happen. Because the Lance Corporal's telling me, hell no, Sergeant, I'm going home to see my wife. So I'm like, what can you do for him? I can give him some medicine, freaking, he can fly like that. The kid flown with a broken tooth from Ali Salim, Kuwait, we landed in Frankfurt, then we flew into Reykjavik, and then we flew into Chicago, to the one in Jersey, the base in Dover in Jersey, and then we landed in Fort Steele, Oklahoma, to let off another group, and then we finally land at March.
Wow.
And the first thing I said when I met my liaison from our battalion was, I've got his weapon, he's going with you, take him straight to dental and tell me where the buses are.
So upon returning home, what was that like after being away for so long?
It was very weird. It's the only way to put that. It was extremely weird because you go outside the wire with your boys and sometimes your girls if you got them, and you guys are keeping each other safe. You go home and everybody scatters. You go out and you feel like you're naked because you don't have any weapons on you except maybe a knife that you carry, because I don't know what Marine doesn't carry a knife. But you're constantly nervous. You're trying to get adjusted to what American life is, because during that time, it was hearing explosions every now and then, or machine gun fire, or going into, you're thinking about going into this freaking tent because you got to clear it because nobody's coming out. And then you come home and you're seeing everybody act the way they are. Vehicles backfiring. You're sitting there trying to, oh crap, we're looking for your buddy. So it was very weird and concerning when we got home.
Did you have any support from like friends or family when you got back?
My wife, her uncle was a Vietnam vet, and I had real trouble when I first got back. The first night I was home, second night I was home with her, I ended up talking to that man from 2 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the morning because I was out of my mind. I felt like I needed to have a weapon on me at all times. I was carrying my own my personal pistols. My wife was looking at me going, why are you sleeping on the floor? Because I couldn't get comfortable in the bed. And the next question was, why are you sleeping with the shotgun and the 30-30 next to you? I need to be protected. And getting her to understand that, her uncle talking to her and saying that, he's got to feel that, like, we got to work him off of that. But he needs that right now because you can tell he's extremely nervous. So it took a little bit to get used to, but thankfully they supported me and helped me with that.
What were some ways they helped you?
My wife was being very patient, telling me I need to go get help from the VA, go see a counselor. My wife's uncle, Bob, he would turn around and tell me, don't watch anything with explosions or shooting. Watch something funny. He'd literally call me up and say, what are you watching right now? Because he'd hear the TV in the background. And I'd say something like, Major Payne or something like that. He goes, good. Watching any war flicks? No, Bob, I'm staying away from them.
So at this point, were you out of the service or were you still in?
I was still in. I came back to that year, 2007, to get my wife from New Jersey, and I brought her back to Pendleton, and I got selected to go with the MIT team the following year to be a transitional team member, teaching the Iraqi brigade the things that they had to do. So he would call me during that time, and during that time I was either doing training for the MIT team or staying, we were trying to go out because I was still nervous about going out. Never left the house or left the base without at least a knife on me, sometimes 2 or 3. And we would, I just couldn't find the joy in it because I was constantly nervous. My wife was doing everything she could to help me out. So 2007, 2008, I ended up deploying again with a MIT team. That was very different from deploying with Marines that I worked with for years.
Because this time you're training while you're overseas, correct?
So this time my job, because I was the senior 03, I'm still sergeant, by the way, I was put in the position of S3 chief for training and operations. I was also in charge of being the platoon sergeant. I was also learning to do JTAC, which meant I controlled all airflow that would go through in our area. And I had this machine that I had to learn on called the CPOF, the Command Post of the Future. 6 or 7 TV screens with like 14 different freaking laptops hooked up to it. You had everything from Blue Force Tracker and a few other different items on there that I'd have to constantly monitor. And talk to a captain who was my S3 officer, who was he was an airman he was a winger from the Marine Corps. He was a helicopter pilot. And we're going over all sorts of things, and he's teaching me the JTAC portion, so I understood what I needed. At the same time, I'm sending out patrols with our guys, ensuring that they're teaching the Iraqi brigade what they're supposed to do, deconflicting information, talking to different people, and trying to run frickin' 15 people, including officers.
Was it difficult working with the Iraqi brigade?
Yes, because of the language barrier. My Arabic was basic, the simple hellos, can I search your place? I tried to learn as much as I could, but our interpreter, he was good because he was military, and our lieutenant colonel took him for his. So whenever I could steal that guy, I would take him with me to go over and talk to them about the training and operations, because he was prior Republican Guard that decided to come over to the United States and help out and became a Terp with us.
And with the training, was that like you'd be training them like the tactics you learned in the Marine Corps, or would it just be like basic, more
basic stuff? We wouldn't really go into the Marine Corps training because their tactics, we taught them their tactics. We would show them what would work and see what they wanted to do. We didn't want to teach them Marine Corps tactics because hey, we're Marines, and because we were we were a MIT team, we technically belonged to M&F West. So if it was an Army general in charge, they would tell us this is what we're going to do. Maybe a difference from what we might have done in the Marine Corps. The biggest issue that we had when we were training them was getting them to understand it didn't matter that they were Shiite or Sunni, and they were dealing with Shiites or Sunni. To stop trying to fight and just try to figure out what the situation was. And that came to a culmination during a time where we had Shiites, all right, and we ran into a police force of Sunnis, and that was a scary time because they're all sitting there shooting their weapons up in the air, and we're literally looking at our captain going, that's it, we've had it. Pointed our weapons at each of them and said, the next person that shoots around is gonna freaking get dropped. And we had Rick explain that those bullets are gonna be coming straight down. We don't know where they're gonna come, so we're not gonna get hurt because you guys wanna sit there and show who's freaking bad by shooting your AK in the air. Trying to get them to understand that purpose. Because I know it was part of their beliefs and whatever, just to go ahead and pop off a couple rounds. But we didn't know the weapon X factor of where those rounds were going to fall because of how big of an area it could be.
Right. How long was this tour?
I unfortunately only did about 5 months, and then my wife got sick and I had to go back to the States.
And would that be your last tour overseas?
That was my last tour overseas.
When did you get out the service at that point?
So at that point, I became a police sergeant for our battalion and then moved to base maintenance to take care of the area because I was headstrong and wanted to make sure things got done. I left the service on October 29th of 2010.
With that, like going back to the adjustment thing, because now you're out of the service, did you have to go back to those old strategies of like not watching war movies, things like that?
I didn't watch a war movie until 2013. It's the first time I was able to actually sit through and watch a science fiction war movie. I couldn't watch something like We Were Soldiers or I couldn't watch Band of Brothers or anything like that. Any of those movies, even Black Hawk Down, I tried watching that and that did not set over too well. So those movies, if my wife wanted to watch them, she had to watch them by herself, I would leave.
Right. Did anything new help while you were out of the service, like those strategies or?
At that time, no, because we were living in Illinois and it wasn't really much help with the VA at that time in my area because they were used to just dealing with World War II vets. It was not something fresh. It was when we moved up here to Rhode Island, Massachusetts area that I actually had best help. When I got with the PTSD clinic out of Providence, that really changed me and made me a lot better.
So the community out here was a lot stronger than what it was where you were before then. Very good. Do you have any like closing, like last minute advice for like people going in now or this new generation of future Marines or seamen or airmen, soldiers?
I would say to anybody going into the service, all right, because we are very tight-lipped about how it actually things go, because it's just the way we are. When you get in, the best thing you can do, in all honesty, is do your 4 years honorably and decide whether or not you want to stay in. If you don't want to stay in after your first year, do your 4 years honorably and get out. You know, don't do the wrong things. Don't make it harder for yourself, because in all honesty, it's some of the best times of my life, and I've got a lot of memories, and I know I could talk for a long time about it, but don't screw yourself over getting your chance to do things.
Yeah. All right. That's all we have for today, but Robert, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been an honor.